Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Beitz. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. There we go. All right. Yeah. So the reason I decided to talk about emotional intelligence was because this gentleman I talked to last week, he just found a better term for it's more relatable for men rather than do you want to develop your intuition or do you want to develop your emotional intelligence? And there's differences, but you know, there's similarities too. So yeah. So yeah, what were you just going to say about that?
Oh, I was just saying, I was just been, assisting co-facilitating, co-teaching at an event down south this last weekend, a couples retreat. And so, things like emotional intelligence is such an important part of, that deeper connection, that deeper relationship, and as you said, it's interesting. A lot of men don't really give it any sort of consideration, but it's one of the major key pieces in enhancing communication or just being able to be more understanding for your partner. It, being able to have that deeper, if there's some issue between yourself and your partner or whatever, if you have emotional intelligence, you can navigate your way through that talk, whether it's buffered with love or whether it's a bit frank or whatever it may be. You can navigate your way through it with your partner so much better. um
Yeah. And I find because, a couple of days a week, I'm doing fire safety training, teaching people how to remain calm and stuff like that. And, you know, I'm doing the same 1.5 hour course, 3 or 4 times a day. And I'm glad I only do it 2 days a week. It'd drive me crazy if I was doing it 5 days a week. And so, I've got a huge variety of students from different backgrounds, different industries. Some of them are high management level people earning like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Some of them are fairly entry level, and you can see the difference looking there. And I'm trying to constantly engage them. And we started a new guy at work the other day, and the boss got him to buddy around with me for a couple of hours, and the boss made the comment. He says, "Doug's quite passionate when he teaches," and I'm thinking. So I go into the next training session with this guy sitting sort of in the group as well, and I'm thinking, yeah, I do get passionate. I am interested, and like I often stir the people's emotions because to get their attention, I'm I'm trying to talk them through scenarios that aren't just fire related, that are other types of emergencies. Because a lot of my students are they didn't volunteer, but they have to be in charge when it hits the fan. When there's an emergency in their workplace, they've got to take charge, get those staff out, the customers, everything out. And so I'm trying to make it real for them. And I had a lady the other day, and just before we started the session, she's sort of all laughy and jokey around, and I've done this so many times. I'm really, I'm sort of cool. Like I know all about this stuff. I'm like, oh yeah. 10 minutes in, I'm describing scenarios, and I'm trying to engage them. And she's sitting there, she goes, "Oh God, I'm getting all nervous now." Like, like I was bringing out. And for me, that's another form of emotional intelligence because I've learned. Now, I didn't develop this overnight, I can tell you, but I've learned how to politely and to the level that it needs to go to emotionally engage them in the training. And they're just sitting there. Sometimes I'll say to them, "We're about to watch this video. When it gets to this stage, we'll pretend to leave. We're going to pretend to evacuate the room. We're not going to evacuate. We're just going to stay still. The video hits this point, and I go, all right, now we would all hop up, and my hands come up. Half of them jump up, get ready to leave the room. And I'm like, no, I said, we're pretending to. Sit back down, keep watching the video, you know.
Mm,
But, and then I know I've emotionally engaged them.
mm.
And what I'm teaching them goes in. And they come up to me at the end of the hour, and they go, "That was really, we've done fire safety training half a dozen times. That was the best one." Because I hooked them in, like I've got their emotion. And so they're going to remember the learning because I hit that emotion. And so the day when that emotion hits, of when it hits the fan and an incident like that I just described and verbalized, painted that
They'll
picture for them,
replay it.
that's
Mm.
going to replay and they're going to go, what did Doug, that crazy fire safety teacher, teach me to do? Oh, do this, then do this, then do this. And if they remember two or three of the six steps I taught them, they're they're going to be flowing a
Right.
lot, but at least they get a good start at it, you know?
Mhm.
So I think there's a lot of different ways. Um, you know, you were talking about emotional intelligence with our partners, and that's so important because, you know, like we're with our partners a lot and with them for a really long time. You know, I'm only with these students for an hour, hour and a half in the class. And it's mostly one-way communication most of the time. But with our partners and that, being sensitive to how they're feeling when certain things happen, etc. It's so important. It makes your life and because you're making their life easier,
Mhm.
it's making your life easier.
Mm.
Yeah.
100%, you know, and you know, it's so much easier even to have conflict resolution, you know, so to speak, because you know, if one partner, you know, says or does something that upsets the other person, you know, you can easily discuss that out and find that mutual ground, or find a resolution, you know, because there's emotional intelligence, you know, or emotional maturity is a sort of another sort of words, you know, in that as well. They're subtly different, but both, you know, are quite closely linked, you know, and so that can make a huge difference for people to be able to, you know, discuss things. And you know, the intelligence part is also really being more aware of your partner too, you know, attentive to, you know, what he or she needs in the moment, you know. So if they need to have some time of being, you know, they're tired after, you know, doing some event or something like that, or they're tired after, you know, doing some long shifts or something like that, and you can just allow them to have that peace, you know, you don't bombard them with anything, or you know, or when they are, you know, there, and you can excite them, or get them, encourage them, you know, you can, so you have that awareness on how to kind of move with the flow, so to speak. And I think that adds to that connectedness within a relationship, because you know, you have intelligence in how you engage with your partner.
Yeah. Look, 2 days ago, I was having a discussion with someone because my wife and I, we've been married for 40 years, been together 45 years. So there's a lot of history there. And I was sharing with someone the other day that how, like, and I didn't even realize at the time how good she was at how good she was at emotional intelligence early on in our marriage. When I was a professional firefighter, you know, we'd have the kids in the back of we only ever had one car. So she would pick me up at 8 o'clock in the morning after I'd done a night shift or whatever. The kids would be in the back seat. We'd go and drop them at school or whatever. And, you know, they'd always say to me, oh, Daddy, did you go to a fire last night? And look, the answer 95% of the time was no. And they'd giggle, they go, oh, Daddy goes to work, doesn't do anything, ha, ha, ha. Then one day she would see me walking out to the car and she could see the look on my face. And she knew I'd had a hell night. Like, you know, I'd been like, she's like, and she would go, boys, when Daddy gets in the car, just be quiet. Just let Daddy be quiet. Daddy's very tired. Yeah, you know, I'd be tired because I'd done a 14-hour night shift and we could sleep if we didn't have calls. There was beds. But it's not just that I'd been awake. She could see the look on my face. And after we'd dropped the kids at school, she would look at me and go, wow, how was your night? And I'd been to like a horrific car accident or some sort of incident where there was people seriously hurt or died or whatever. And we're not in the distance. We're like in the, you know, you're with the dead
Right
body
there.
for a while.
Mm.
You know, like it doesn't, if it happened every night, you couldn't handle it. You know, it's not, so this is why my kids thought it was funny. Daddy would go to work and, you know, and through the night, we might have been to some fire alarms or things like that or whatever. Well, we didn't consider that really. it was just a false, someone burnt toast or something. So he didn't actually do much, just reset the alarm. But yeah, my wife was very intuitive, very sensitive, always has been to other people's situations and needs. And she said to me the other day, she goes, "Oh, I saw so and so at work the other day who she doesn't see very often." She says, and I just looked at her and said, "How are you?" And they went, "Oh, I'm fine." And she goes, "No, how are you?"
Mm.
"Oh, no, no, I'm fine." And she goes, "No, you're not. I can
Yeah.
tell." And then, "Oh, no, it's okay." And then next thing, the lady's gone, "Oh, my ex-boyfriend passed away a couple of weeks ago, and then some other man I know, like like in 1 month, I've lost two men that I know,
Mm.
and they were like, these are men in their 30s or 40s, not older
It's
men, like
unusual. Mm.
yeah, and my wife can pick it up, and and then so next thing she goes, "Oh, so I gave her a hug," and the lady needed a hug. But my wife wasn't about to walk up and hug her, not knowing what was going on. And so that emotional intelligence, and I think back of the things I've put my wife through the years, through emotional immaturity. Like I'm developing it and I'm definitely getting better every day now. Like every day I'm getting better at it. But gosh, she's put up with me for so long being such an idiot. Like, um, it's she needs to be she put up on a pedestal. She's like a goddess. She knows what's going on where the rubber meets the road, I'll tell you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, quite often usually the scenario is the woman is more, emotional intelligent, emotional aware, emotionally, you know, supportive, so to speak. So, us guys really can be a little bit numb, especially we know most guys that we've been taught as part of um, the norm, to stay away from emotions. That's weak. If you cry, you're weak, all that side of things. And so men do tend to try and stay away from that. But, the truth of the matter is that the emotions are a very important feedback system for us. And so we really do need to utilize them to be able to read in, just like your wife can sense the other lady that was in a tough time. It's being that little bit more sensitive, because then it's just additional information that you can use in the moment to read your situation, whether it's your partner, whether it's someone at work, and be able to tune into the emotions. And, if we don't tune into our own emotions, we don't know how to, gauge and engage with them and then with others, so, it is important to have that emotional awareness, and us guys tend to stick away from that, because it's like, oh, that's weak, so I'm just going to be tough, and that it doesn't work. That's why we tend to be a little bit behind our wives or our partners, don't we?
Yeah. And for the guys listening who are afraid to show their emotions, because I mean, how many of us want to bloody start crying in front of a group of men, like or women, like
Nobody.
or strangers or people we know, whatever? Like we don't want to. But just know this, guys, if an emotion hits, it's like I look at it like a wave in the ocean hit you. The wave doesn't stay there for 15 minutes smashing you. All right. It hits and it goes. And I've heard from multiple sources, and I'm not a scientist and I can't back this one up and I haven't researched this. I'm just going off what I've heard, that an emotion will last no more than 90 seconds.
Mm.
If you're choosing to have a hissy fit for 5 minutes or something, or 10 minutes, you've chosen to do that. All
Yeah.
right. It comes, it hits for some time, 90 seconds or less, and then
Mm.
it goes. And what you do with it during that time is and that may cause tears to well, tears of happiness, tears of joy, or tears of sorrow, or pain, or tears that you don't know why there are. I've had it where I've been like, there's tears and I'm emotional, but I couldn't. If someone said, "Tell me your emotion right now in one word," sometimes I couldn't tell you, but there's still tears. Are you happy? Are you sad? I'm not sure. Sometimes it's obvious I'm sad. Sometimes it's obvious I'm happy. But it hits, and sometimes the tears occur, and it's and from what I've seen and heard, for any single men trying to pick up a woman, if they see you cry, I think that's like they'd love it.
Open something up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were going to think, this is my guy. He's not afraid to do that. So,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah, again, to me, if you look at we're part of this planet, the same sort of thing with animals. Animals also experience the different emotions type thing, but they allow it to flow through them, and that's again can affect us in a health way as well when we don't let go of the emotions, and so that's an important part that you brought up, Doug, about allowing the emotion to flow through us, so we can be, that ties in very closely, as you say, to emotional intelligence. So if you can receive the emotion, allow it to flow through you, you have the awareness, why does this make me angry? Why does this make me sad? So you can either in the moment, if you have the presence, but otherwise even afterwards, you can ask yourself that question, and you can learn, start to really know thyself, learn about yourself a whole lot more about, and then you can manage yourself even better, which gives you even more emotional intelligence in different situations, because you know what will upset you, what will make you happy, how you get affected. And it is, it's an important thing to allow that to flow through. Most of us can't. Most of us are still learning to be able to let go, especially if something upsets us or something makes us angry. We hold on to that for way too long and get caught up in I think honestly, the scenario there, and I encourage you guys out there to have a think about this next time you have a significant emotion is, what story are you playing in your head? Quite often it's something triggers you, your partner or someone at work does the same thing again, and it plays a story in your mind, and so that angers you, and then you keep playing that story in your mind, and so you keep getting angry or staying angry. Can you choose, because it's just a choice, how we are at every single moment is just a choice, and if we keep that philosophy, it's much easier to do, just as you said, Doug, that have that emotion flow through you, which will give you awareness and a feedback, but then you can let it go. I choose to still be calm. I choose to return back to my calmness. It's more easily said than done, believe me, but the importance about that, you look at people who really are sort of emotional masters or masters, they are able to stay calm in the storm. That's where things like meditation are really powerful and have a huge impact on us,
very much.
because they give us the presence. And as part of that presence is also tied into the emotional intelligence. And in that piece, you can certainly allow that emotion to wash over you. When we hang on to stuff, again, that's where we get dis-ease, because we're hanging on to emotions, and it then has a long-term impact on our health as well, if we keep hanging on to certain issues and things like that.
Yeah. Earlier, you said something interesting. You talked about animals and stuff as well, like experiencing emotions, and it just reminded me. And this would be an advanced emotional intelligence thing. The example I was reminded of, say, like a rabbit or something like that being chased down by a wolf or a cheetah or something, and the rabbit gets away. Now, apparently, scientists have studied this. That rabbit gets down into its burrow and it escapes. For the next 2 to 3 minutes, it will shake
Yeah, it
uncontrollably,
shakes.
shake and
Yeah,
shake and shake and shake and shake.
shakes it off.
And sometimes that happens to humans. We get into a situation that's been like in a car accident or some sort of trauma event has occurred, and we'll start to shake. Now, if there's medical professionals around, they'll hold you down and stop you from shaking because they don't understand what's
Stand.
going on.
Mhm.
And they've proven that if we shake uncontrollably like that for a couple of minutes, we should let people do that, let them physically shake. And apparently, it will stop PTSD. They've proven this. It's just a natural thing. We've shaken that off, and we're going to be able to emotionally deal with that short-term trauma of being hit by a car on our bicycle or something so much better. Physically, it's not helping, but emotionally we're going to get over it so much better. Yeah. So yeah, the animals just naturally do it. And that little bunny apparently after 2 or 3 minutes will just come out of its burrow and just start wandering around eating grass again, like it's over.
Mhm.
Gone. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing with the deer, the deer
Yeah.
chase, same thing. They shake it all off afterwards. And, you know, I, and I would also sort of encourage, the men out there, they might say, well, that's cool. I shake next time I do that. But what can I do on a daily basis to help
Yeah.
myself, improve my emotional intelligence, And one of the things I would suggest in that piece is, um, as you're going throughout your day, try and adopt a practice of being mindful. Mindfulness as we would call it. So, what do I feel right now? How am I right now? And so, most of us men, we're too busy compartmentalizing and putting, we're in work mode now. I've got to do this, I'm building this, or I'm organizing that. And so we compartmentalize it. But even while you're supervising, organizing, building, whatever, how do I feel right now? What am I feeling today? Am I feeling good today? Am I feeling not so good today? Am I feeling happy? Is this person, inspiring me? Is this person, annoying me? And and as you start to practice, being aware in the moment, the brilliance of that piece is that you can catch things early. You can learn about yourself while you're in, say, a normal day, and then when you get to the more extreme type emotional situations, you're already, one would say, trained up, because you already are aware of things. You're aware of the emotions long beforehand, so you can deal with the situation earlier, almost have, damage control or preventative maintenance, one might say,
Mm.
and it comes from that place of mindfulness, so that you're aware of yourself and aware of the situation around you. Um, and it's something that each and every one of us can do, throughout the day, and you can even, if you have difficulty even doing what I've just said, put a little, you know, an alarm every hour and then reduce it to an alarm every 30 minutes. And then, if you want to go to the extreme, you can, have an alarm every 15 minutes or something, just a little beep or something like that. It's all you need is just a little beep, not a great big long alarm because it gets annoying. But if you have that little beep, it's just, what am I feeling? Check in with myself. When we
Great.
do men's groups and things like that, we start by, usually checking in. How do I feel? What's happening?
Yeah.
And so, that's an important, simple practice that any man can do to learn more and start to engage with his emotions and allow himself to start to become aware of what sort of person he is. And the incredible thing about that is you actually start to see yourself, a little bit like your partner. Like how your partner sees you is not often how we see ourselves. And if we're so immune or ignorant to our emotions, our partner sees a different version of us than we see ourselves. So as soon as we become more aware, we start to actually see who we are. What am I projecting out into the world? Because you become aware of it, and
Yeah.
that adds to the intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to my wife again, we've been discussing over the last year or two or three her writing a book. And most of it's about like when we were in our late 20s, we packed up the kids and we moved overseas, built a little scuba dive resort in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And she wanted to write the book for our grandkids so that they knew what their grandparents had done. It, writing a book is not the easiest thing to do. I've never tried to do it. So anyway, we discussed about doing a podcast and then turning the podcast into a book, just different ways to try and use current technology to sort of do it. And so we're sitting back and she's giving me her ideas of what she wants to bring out. A lot of it, what she wants to bring out, Paul?
Right.
Her emotions at the time of going through everything. Because mate,
That's where we
we
relate
look
to.
back, we look back now and laugh and giggle and enjoy the stories of what happened. But at the time, it was bloody hard. It really, really was tough at the time. And she wants to describe to other women the emotions she went through. And and she says, I'll give you a couple of examples. And she's telling, and sometimes, and she goes, but before I say this, I don't want you to feel bad. And so she's and sometimes it involved me, sometimes it didn't. And I'm listening now with really different ears than, and I've changed a little. I'm now 61. Since I was in my late 20s, I am quite a different person, very like chalk and cheese. And I'm getting better at things. And I'm sitting listening and I'm like, oh my God, like she is so right. Like the crap I put her through, how I could have made her life so much easier in some of these situations. And, I wasn't sent to earth to make my wife's life easier. That's not my sole role. I guess my role is eventually to be able to do that, to learn how to do that. And I am starting to, to cast my mind back from being 61 now to my late 20s and remembering these events that she's mentioning. And it wasn't all about me making her life hard. It was just the circumstances at the time. And I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, now I did know at the time it was bothering you, but yeah, I can really see a lot more now. I'm still not getting the whole picture, obviously, but she's wanting to project it from her eyes at the time. But at the same time, she's also saying, but I don't want to write it in a way that it hurts anyone's feelings. She's still sensitive to other people's emotions and how they might feel. So she goes, I've still got to be careful how I say it so that it's just that it's me. It's
Yeah.
how she perceived it at the time. But yeah, like she opens my eyes up to emotional intelligence constantly in a very polite way. Yeah, so it's and yeah, and do I wish I had handled some things differently or at the time? Yeah, I do. I really do wish I'd done it differently. Yeah, yeah.
But there's always so much more wisdom in hindsight,
Mm,
but I think the important piece is to, you know, think about that. Most of us don't go back and contemplate, how did I deal with certain things in a certain way. That's a beautiful exercise you just highlighted, Doug. And unfortunately, we tend to only do that when we get into our more senior years, so to speak, because when we're young, we're too busy living life. But I advise, you guys out there, at whatever age you are, I do encourage you to try and, you know, take that time out to contemplate. The journaling is really powerful in being able to think about those things, record those emotions, record what happened, and then you can think about it. It's another thing of learning about yourself, which is what I said earlier, and that adds to the emotional intelligence, because you can look back and go, well, even if you can hold that space, like I really stuffed up when I did that, but what did I do wrong so I can do it better next time, you know? And those are the bits and pieces. Or you did really well and you think, well, why did I do really well this time that I didn't do so well last time? And look at those pieces and use that as part of your adding to your emotional intelligence. So when something similar comes up in the future, you already know what things triggered the good result as opposed to the negative result. And so you can guide things down that path, or guide yourself down that path, you know?
mm,
I mean, even in things like, and we talked about how holding on to emotions, learning to just, some people can meditate, but otherwise you could just be exercising. If you've got a whole lot of pent up frustration, just go out and go for a walk, ground yourself, or go out and get the punch bag and,
mm,
just,
absolutely.
beat the living daylights out of the punch bag. It's a way to, it's not directly shaking off those emotions, but it is a way of kind of getting rid of them, getting them out, and it's a wonderful way to let off that steam, and allow yourself to come back to that stable place. And then you're in a much better place to be emotionally aware, emotionally intelligent within yourself, because you're not caught up in the emotions. And that's ultimately where I think, when you think about it, emotional intelligence is being aware in the moment, what's happening with my emotions, what's happening with the situation. And in that way, as you become more and more aware, you can exercise self-control. And it's like in my world with the teachings and stuff that I'm learning, it's about, we have the personality part, so that personality part is linked in, closely to our emotional body, our emotions. And so we can sometimes be overwhelmed by those emotions, And the emotional intelligence is to be able to go, okay, this is what I'm feeling in the moment, but can I allow my higher intelligence, my awareness to be able to allow me to practice mindfulness, allow me to practice, being calm in the storm, even though I'm still feeling fear, panic, whatever inside me, but can I be calm while that storm is still raging within me, you know? And it's something that we can all do.
Yeah. And I think one way to, like, if you do meditate and that sort of thing, I think it helps you see a bigger picture of life. So when a storm comes, you can sort of pull back and see the whole, well, more of it, not the whole thing, more of the scene, and realize, yeah, this is going to hit for a short time. I can see it's going to pass. It's not such a big thing. But if you're caught down in that little storm and you just, you freak out and panic, I find that meditation helps me pull back and just say, hang on. And it helps me tap into my intuition a bit and get some benevolent information from somewhere, just a sense of it's going to be okay. My wife went to the doctor yesterday for a visit. She'd had this specific test that she'd had a couple of years ago, and they've been working on making this thing better. And the results she got from the test said that it was worse, not better.
Mm.
And I was like, hmm. And she can get a bit emotional, and she didn't. She's like, I'm kind of bummed out about that. She goes, I'm shocked. She goes, I have been working so hard on this for the last year or two that I expected the results to have gone the other way. And I was like amazed with her how well she handled it because she's learning to do these things. If she'd have gone into full shock and panic mode over it, um, sh and some people would, but she'd handled it really well. And I'm thinking, that's sort of the main thing about it is how we sort of handle it and take it because we're doing these other things. And another quick example on emotional intelligence I just thought of a while ago. I was talking to a lady, and she said, "Oh," and she was talking about a guy that I know a little bit, and she said, "I was sort of at his house the other day, and his child did something and he jumped down their throat and she's like, wow. She said, I was talking to the gentleman's wife later and says, like, what makes him so angry? Like, why is he like that? Is he angry because I'm visiting and I'm taking your time? And she's like, no, 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 like, and I'm sort of listening to this person talk and I'm thinking, yeah, I know this person a bit, but not well. And I'm thinking, yeah, I got a bit of an idea what's going on. So she's sort of talking, and I said, you know what? I said, most men lead lives of quiet desperation. And she's like, oh. And I said, a little bit more about that. And I said, this guy's not happy with something in his life. Like, obviously, like, and he's just taking it out on the child and the child over the child just being a child, like doing nothing particular. And then she's starting to realize, and I'm saying, like, this guy's not, and then she said, yeah, she goes, well, when I talk to his wife a bit more, she goes, like trying to probe the wife for why he's not so happy because she was shocked. And she says, oh, yeah, he absolutely hates his job. And I'm like, oh, that's so obvious. It's not funny because from what I know of the guy, he's highly intelligent. And yeah, it took some intelligence to get the job he's got. But have you ever heard the term golden handcuffs? And she's like, what do you mean? I said, he's got a fairly good paying job and he's got young children and a mortgage. And he feels like he's got the gold and he's handcuffed with it.
Mm.
And he just like, how do I get out of this job? So, and so he's got this constant frustration and he's pissed off at life because he's got to go to this job all the time. And and he is a very intelligent guy. But if he were able to start to learn about going within, meditating, tapping into his intuition, I'm not saying he would, but he might be able to see a way out of it. He might be able to see a way to adapt the job he has, talk to his boss. Can I do something different that I would enjoy more? Or how can I train to just get the heck out of this profession and get into something else? But it's just eating him up inside,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, there's a lot of men like that.
It's an important piece that you just said there, Doug, about again, this is where mindfulness comes in and emotional awareness, where when your mind is open, you're able to look for solutions. When we're caught up in our emotions, the mind's just, fixated on that whatever it is. And so, that's an important piece, again, tying it back into emotional intelligence. If you can be aware, you can look for other solutions. Sometimes it's keeping the same job, but reframing, finding the good things in that job and finding the good things in the life, or just being grateful for what's there. And as you do, it's part of a gratitude practice, so if you look at that scenario, what ways can I find enjoyment in this situation, if I can't change it? So you start to retrain the mind, because the mind's retrainable. You can retrain it. You can find the good things and start to enjoy those. And they might start off being very small, but as you move into that and start to find enjoyment in it, that can actually surprisingly expand, and you can end up having you enjoy that same job so much more. And I'm not saying to everyone out there that you've got to keep that same job, but with that mind being aware and open, then, and you're not playing the same stories over and over, you can find other solutions. And maybe it does mean going and doing a different job. And when you think about it too, sometimes when you look back and you hear stories of people where they've just, broken the handcuffs, so to speak, and gone out, it could mean that they've, as a worst case, lost a house, because they couldn't afford the mortgage, whatever it may be. But when you look back at those scenarios, on this planet that we live on, it's the way we learn is through, when our back's up against the wall, through pain,
Yep.
through challenges. And
Yep.
that's where we learn to take on new resources within ourselves that we never knew. And it's in those challenging moments that, in most cases, especially if you have emotional intelligence, you can come even closer to your partner, even closer to your kids, so it can be a turning point in your life and a new chapter in your life. And it could be financially challenging, but that could be a good thing, not a bad thing, because it brings you closer together. It's a whole life is all about experiences. So, I've been there where there's been money, and then when there's not so money, and, it just gives a different set of circumstances. We're still, in most cases, going to be safe. I can't say that for everyone, but it's highly likely that you're going to still be safe. It's just maybe a little more challenging. But that's where you bring in new resources. And quite often later on in your life, you look back and you go, thank goodness I did that, because that completely did a pivot in my life. And then quite often you go to something else, which ends up, you can make even more money, or be even have a happier life or a closer life with your wife and kids, So that to me is a really important piece, in not hanging on to emotions. You see how, guys out there, you see how all of this is all tied in. It's about not hanging on to your emotions. It's about allowing yourself to be more aware in the situation. It's allowing yourself to be more open within your own mind. What other solutions are there? How can I find the gold in this? And a big piece of that is to actually stay out of judgment. We're always our worst judges of
Oh,
ourselves, and then
yep.
judge, what's happening wrong with the job. But if we're looking at the darkness all the time, we're going to get frustrated. Try and look at what you enjoy, what you love, what you get out of it that uplifts you. And how do you know what uplifts you unless you're really more tied into your emotion? Something happens one day at that horrible job, for example, that he really enjoyed, you know,
Mm.
and it's in that awareness, go, hey, this is really cool. I love what happened here today. And that gives him the pointers to go to his boss and say, I'd like to do more of this, because this is what inspires me,
Yeah.
so that can have enormous flow-on effects. And it
Yeah.
all comes down to awareness, and that's part tied into emotional intelligence.
Exactly. You're talking there, I was talking about the golden handcuffs and you're talking about money, and it just made me had the thought, money is an amplifier. So if we get a lot of money or we have no money, like you were talking about, we go through a stressful thing, Like if you can't afford to pay your house or something, and the bank sells it, whatever happens, you lose a lot of money. That's going to amplify what's inside you. If you suddenly gain a lot of money, that's going to amplify what's inside you. And it was interesting. I interviewed a guy last week for on a podcast, and we were talking about psychedelic things and all sorts of stuff. And I told him about a very unpleasant mushroom trip I had at 14, and I've never touched them since. And I explained it all, and at the end of it, he'd done a lot of studies into this sort of stuff, and he said, Doug, the psilocybin in the mushroom actually didn't make you have that experience. And I'm
Yeah,
like, oh, really? And he
yeah,
goes, no, they've scientifically proved that all it does is amplify
enhance. Yeah.
what's in you. And I'm like, okay. And I thought, oh, that's just like money. It's just an amplifier. So it depends what you go into it with of what it's going to be. And so, as you and I have both found through the years, meditation, going into yourself, becoming aware, like, and being able to pull back in situations and see a bigger picture, take the blinkers off a little bit more,
Hmm.
is it helps reduce that amplification of things. We're able to, not control's not the right word, but absorb, like be able to go through the situation. You
Work
know,
your way through. Mhm.
imagine like if you were a 40-year-old adult and you'd never seen or experienced rain, and all of a sudden you walked outside, it would overwhelm you, like because you hadn't had an awareness of that. And if that was the situation that was going to happen, you might say to the person, I'm going to take you into the shower, and we're going to shower you very gently and going to get ready for and expose you to the rain, instead of put you out into a lightning storm. But yeah, so it's yeah, very interesting like that. Some things just amplify the emotion. And if we know that's going to happen, yeah, interesting.
And probably something that can help reduce that amplification, so to speak, as well as emotional intelligence, is I encourage people, or I encourage men, because that's what he's, talking about here, but people to be in that place of listening. This is kind of another tip on how to gain more emotional intelligence is practice listening more than speaking. Of course, you and I have got to speak because we've got to share what we're doing here. So we're alternating, we're having an intelligent conversation and alternating between each other, each sharing our own perspectives and our own. So you can see out there, Doug and I having this intelligent conversation because it's not a one-sided conversation. We're both alternating backwards and forwards and sharing our own pieces in this. But I encourage you as you go through life, where possible, be in that place of listening. Listen to yourself internally, listen to your emotions, listen to how you feel. That's where the meditation is a great practice in teaching you to just be and listen. Put your feet in the earth, do some grounding, walk around barefoot outside. But in that, you're listening. Just don't sit there and don't have the radio on blaring or anything like that. Just have quiet and just listen. Listen to the birds, listen to what's happening around. The same thing when your partner. Most women, when you're I do a lot of things with couples and men and women. Most women want to be listened to. They want a man who will listen to them and acknowledge them. Don't fix the woman because she doesn't want to be fixed. Listen, and say, okay, darling, I hear you. I understand that you would feel this way, or, wow, that's really immense, intense, or whatever it is. But be on her side. Let her tell you her story, listen to her, and so you're acknowledging, you're not trying to fix, it's, oh yeah, but if you did this, so that's just going to make you even more annoyed or angry with you, so the listening adds into your emotional intelligence. If you're busy listening, And what I mean by listen, I mean really listen. Tune into him, her, whatever it may be, and listen to them. What are they trying to share with you? What are they trying to impart to you? What's going on with them, so to speak, and be attentive to what it is, rather than hear the first two or three words and then suddenly start thinking your own story. Well, if she did this, or if he did this, or da 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 da, you're not listening. Listen. And I encourage the same thing within yourself, to listen. How am I feeling right now? Am I reacting to my partner or this person? But be in that place of listening. That really gives you a lot of emotional intelligence, because when you do learn to listen, you've got the information to now conduct yourself in an appropriate way, rather than in a reactive way or an incorrect way if you've got your own story going on in your head, because then you're not even engaged with what the person's trying to share. And as I say, your partner will love it if you can actually truly listen to her and just be there with her. Hold her, like your wife said with that woman. She listened. She was listening intently, but the listening includes body language and all those other componentries, so that you are gathering as much information about that person. Intuition, that feeds in. Your intuition will tell you about the non-physical part as well, so that you can read into that person's energy if they are upset or not upset. You might not get all the answers to why they're upset, hence your wife needed to talk to that lady a little bit more to understand what it was. But in that listening, she then needed a hug, so then give her a hug, or they need some space, and all of those things are gathering information to improve your emotional intelligence, so that at any moment in time you can conduct yourself in the best and most appropriate way.
Yeah. It took me about 20 years before I heard someone say just exactly what you said. Well, maybe not before I heard him, but before I heard it and understood it.
That's it.
That, and maybe I'd heard it before that. I don't know, but we've come a long way in the last 20 years. I mean, this is, we got together in 1981 or so. I don't know, a real long time ago. And yeah, and my wife would come home from work and she would go, "This happened at work today," like da 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 da. And she'd be halfway through telling me the story, and I would just interject and I go, "That's not right. They shouldn't be doing that." Like, I'm gonna drive in there tomorrow and talk to your boss about this. Like, all right. And she's looking at me like, "No, you're not. You're not going to talk to my boss about anything." She's not saying that, but she's just, and like, and I wanted to be Mr. Fix It. I was the protector. I was the provider. I was going to fix every problem she had. And that's what I wanted to do. And I thought I was being Super Doug and being a hero. And I was her superhero and she would be so happy with me. I was Clark Kent and she was, what was the lady's name in Superman? I can't even remember now. It's been that. Lois Lane.
Lois Lane.
Lois Lane. She was Lois Lane and I was Clark Kent. And I was going to fix the problem. And everyone would smile and be happy and clap. And gee, what a good husband you are, Doug. She didn't want that. She just wanted me to hear what was going on in her day. And my wife describes things differently than I do. I understate most of the time. She overstates most of the time. And if she was sitting here in this room right now, I would say that in front of her because she would just nod. She'd go, "Yeah, that's how we are." And I'm not criticizing her overstating, and I'm not saying my understating is good. It's just how it is. But oh man, it took, like when I heard that, I'm thinking, oh, I'm just going to listen to what she says now. And it took a while for me to fully do that. And, I do it a lot better now than I used to. And I'm sure there's days when I still interject a bit and I'm going to try and fix this. But I think most of the time I listen to her and so to the point where she feels heard. And I'm sitting there thinking, am I still being a hero here by just listening, or is this, I think I'm just gonna, and then like you say, we just gotta maybe communicate, like, is is there something you want me to do? Do you want me to do anything? And she went, no. Okay. Do you want me to go make you a cup of tea? That'd be great. Yeah, go and do that. Yeah. Come back a couple of minutes later with a cup of tea, you know. And she's like, yeah, that's what I needed. You know. Yeah.
And most of the time it's just wanting to share, and in the sharing, there's a level of offloading, because she could have had a whole lot of emotions that she's hanging on to as well. But and she has the awareness that she needs to kind of just talk about it, share it, offload it, so, and that's where we can be, the Shiva, the rock, and we can be that person for our partner where we can hold that space where she feels safe to be able to just share and offload.
Yeah.
Again, that ties into emotional intelligence. I need to be the rock right now, and I'm just going to be here. I'm just going to listen. I'm going to create this safe space for my lovely wife, and then she can just offload, and then I'll go and make her some tea.
And I just saw the analogy there of she's home. Yeah, it's the end of the day. It's 7, 8 p.m. We were sitting on the couch, and she's just the analogy is she's a steam train, and it's come into the station and it's finished for the day, but the pressure vessel's still full of steam, and she's just letting that steam out as she's telling me, and by the time she's finished telling me, the steam's all emptied and the pressure's gone, and the steam engine can shut down for the night and rest.
Yep. And she's ready for that cup of tea.
Bang. And then off we go. Yeah. And that's all it's needed. Didn't need me to get all my tools out and start working on this steam engine. No, nothing. There was nothing needed to be fixed. Yeah. So, yeah, excellent. Mate, I think we've covered emotional intelligence pretty well today. And for those men out there listening, I think we've given them a few different variants of how it occurs in our lives. And yeah, thank you for your time.
You're welcome, Doug. Thanks for the conversation. It's been a wonderful, inspiring conversation.
Well, we're at the end of another thought-provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever-reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition. It will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.